After the first video of our series, Islam in Context, there was lots of very valuable feedback, and in particular on the mentioned point of colonialism. How colonialism destroyed the traditional forms of Islamic social organization. And today I would like to respond to one of the observations relevant to colonialism and relevant to the Muslim situation today. The observation being can be summarized very simple. What Muslims must do in a current situation when they are not allowed to live according to their own values. Why it is relevant? Because if today group of people, group of Muslims, would decide to live according to the norms of Islam, it would be interpreted and it would be classified as a violation of all possible rights. Human rights, that includes women rights, children rights, rights of minorities, even rights of animals. It would also be rejected as a government which is non-democratic. It would also be rejected as a government that is non-capitalist, which would be classified as undermining the principles of the free market. It would also be condemned as a society which is non-egalitarian, because Islamic society is based on a hierarchy, and so on and so forth. Obviously, us as Muslims, we do not agree with these accusations. We do not agree that Islamic model of life is barbarianism and backwardness. But that's not the point. The point is what is to be done. What us as Muslims must do in a situation that we have just described, and we have to be aware that there is a suggestion by certain Muslim circles that the only way to go forward is the way of violence and war. There is an assumption that the only way to go about it is by waging a war against non-Muslim world in order to defend the right to live the way Muslim wants to live. And today I would like to suggest and propose a different perspective and different answer to this question. But first of all, we would have to say that this assumption that the violence is the only way, it is based, in my humble view, on the lack of understanding of the current situation. The world today has changed since the times of American invasion to Iraq. We remember about George Bush, who said when the weapons of mass destructions were not found in Iraq, he said, "We did not find the weapons, but at least we removed the tyrant and we brought democracy to Iraq." But then, what has happened is that the Republicans have lost, and the Obama, the representative of Democratic Party, won the presidential elections. And one of his key promises during his election campaign was to remove American forces from Afghanistan and Iraq. And the reason why he chose this rhetoric was because nobody wanted to hear any calls to continue making sacrifices in the name of spreading democracy. And if you look at the latest event, the election of Donald Trump, he was much more radical when he said that the whole idea of invasion to Iraq was wrong. And he put it very simple when he said that we shouldn't have get involved because we have created a mess. And in this situation of chaos, when the state of Iraq became disintegrated, we see the terrorist group, so-called Islamic State, has emerged. And the ISIS today is much worse than the regime of Saddam Hussein. And we saw that the Trump coming with this presidential campaign and with this perspective, we saw him winning the elections.
The main reason we went into Iraq at the time was we thought he had weapons of mass destruction. It turns out he didn't, but he had the capacity to make weapons of mass destruction. But I also talked about the human suffering in Iraq, and I also talked the need to advance a freedom agenda.
As a candidate for president, I pledge to bring the war in Iraq to a responsible end. Last year, I announced the end to our combat mission in Iraq, and to date, we've removed more than 100,000 troops. Iraqis have taken full responsibility for their country's security.
Saddam Hussein was a bad guy, right? He was a bad guy, really bad guy. But you know what he did well? He killed terrorists. He did that so good. They didn't read him the rights. They didn't talk. They were a terrorist. It was over. Today, Iraq is Harvard for terrorism. You want to be a terrorist, you go to Iraq. It's like Harvard.
What can we learn from this? What meanings can we extract from these events? We can conclude that today at the West, situation has changed. Today we see that lots of people are not ready to make sacrifices in the name of spreading democracy and spreading the Western social model. And exactly for this reason, today we have ISIS, which exists for a few years, which is much worse than both Saddam Hussein and Muammar Gaddafi put together. But we see ISIS still exists. Why? Because West today is not ready to pay the price. And it is for this reason the refugee crisis and the problem with immigration is so representative. If we will look at the Europe, we see how Europeans are not ready to accommodate refugees. They are not ready to provide them with shelter, to provide them with welfare, to give them jobs. We see also Americans, again, voted for Donald Trump, who promised to build a wall between America and Mexico. And what it tells us that for lots of people, for the significant amount of people at the West, preservation of their safety, which includes safety from crimes, safety from terrorism, safety from being unemployed, and then at the end of the day, preservation of their national identity. All of this is much more important for them than the idea of spreading democracy in the world. What we can see is that today at the West there are lots of people who are not happy with this politics of globalism because they see that this politics, this policy contradicts their interests. And they are those people whom we as Muslims must work with and we must engage them. It is them. We must make them an offer them a deal. Leave Islamic world. Leave us alone. Stop trying to democratize us, to westernize us, and to modernize us. Stop this globalist policy. We should suggest them, in fact, we should insist on them sorting out their own problems, because Western civilization today in a deep crisis. So they must focus on solving their problems and they must leave Muslim world alone. And the moment they will focus on their own problems, they will see how refugees, at least from Muslim world, will stop crossing the borders, and they will see how the desperate Muslims will stop blowing up themselves. But for us as Muslims, for us to be able to offer this deal and to enter this process of negotiations, for these Muslims must stop being an object of manipulation in the global politics and rather become an entity, an actor. And for this, Muslim Ummah requires leaders, political leaders, who would be able to represent the interests of Muslims in this negotiation with the Western world. And these leaders are not the religious leaders. They are not imams and they are not sheikhs. Rather, they are the executives. They are administrative leaders. And for this to happen, besides leadership, Muslims must have their own think tanks, lobby groups, pressure groups. They must have their own media channels who are able to formulate discourse and then spread and broadcast it to the masses, to the public. So when we try and answer this question, what is to be done, and when we try to look and we found a way of realizing the Islamic project, we see there are three important issues which has to be addressed. First one is the matter of Islamic political leadership. Secondly, the matter of intellectual development of Muslim Ummah. And the third one, importance of media resource. And inshallah, each of these three important matters, we're going to address them in future videos. Thank you for watching. Thank you for your support by means of shares and likes. And thank you for your valuable feedback. Assalamu alaikum and God bless.